Hello, my name is Samantha Cooper, and my presentation will be on William LeMessurier and whether he violated ASCE and NSPE Code of Ethics canons in the Citicorp Tower case. So William LeMessurier designed the Citicorp building in the mid-1970s in New York City, which at the time was the 7th tallest skyscraper in the world. He had a very unique design which involved placing supporting columns on all four sides of the structure instead of the corners, and this was to accommodate an existing church. In order to account for this different design, he placed wind braces on the structure to direct all the weight to the columns and also implemented several other features. In 1978, a question posed by the student Diane Hartley caused LeMessurier to go back to his calculations on the Citicorp structure, where he realized that under some wind conditions, the forces the braces would have to withstand were 40% larger than his original calculations had shown. The problem was that at some point in the process, the welded joints that LeMessurier had called for were changed to bolted joints. The use of these bolted joints meant that in a storm that could statistically come every 16 years, the structure would fail and cause a domino effect with surrounding high-risers. This was a serious issue because it meant the possible death of tens of thousands of people in New York City. In order to decide whether LeMessurier violated any codes of ethics, it is important to have some background information. One important piece of information is that nobody double-checked LeMessurier's calculations. This piece of information came from Diane Hartley when she was doing her research on the structure and noticed that only LeMessurier had signed off on the calculations. Another important piece of information is that the newspapers in the city were on strike at the time, which meant that the issue was not publicized through newspaper. And another important piece of information, though, is that even though they did not have control over the newspapers, they did choose to have the workers work at nighttime, and that this was intended for secrecy to fix the structure because what they said is they did not want widespread panic in the city. And so the next piece of information is that the structure was fixed, and when it was, it became the most structurally sound in the whole city. However, the solution did cost over $8 million to do. Moving on to the ASCE and the NSP codes of ethics, due to time constraint, I will focus solely on the NSPE Code of Ethics, the National Society of Professional Engineers, while it is important to remember that the ASCE Code of Ethics is just as important. As you can see to the right, it is more lengthy, so this is why we're sticking to the simple NSPE Code of Ethics. The first canon here is to hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. It is difficult to say that LeMessurier violated this canon as he was acting he acted immediately as soon as he had the knowledge that the public was at risk, and he fixed the problem so that the public was no longer in danger. The second canon here is to perform services only in areas of their competence. LeMessurier did not perform services outside of structural engineering, so it is again difficult to say he violated this canon. The third canon is to issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner. At the time period, as stated on the previous slide, the newspapers were on strike, which meant that LeMessurier could not easily have informed the public as to what was going on, as they did not have the more forms of communication that we now have today, such as email and the internet, texting, that sort of thing. The next canon here is to act for each employer or client as faithful agents or trustees. It is difficult to say that he violated this canon, as it appears that he was a faithful agent to Citicorp. The next canon here is to conduct themselves honorably, responsibly, ethically, and lawfully so as to enhance the honor, reputation, and usefulness of the profession. LeMessurier made civil engineers look more honorable and responsible and ethical by acting to fix the building. He could have ignored the situation, which then would have done the opposite of enhancing the honor, reputation, and usefulness of the profession. So again, as the other canons have had the same judgment, he did not violate this canon as well. Canon is more controversial. This is to avoid deceptive acts. LeMessurier did deceive the public, but it is also important to consider his reasoning behind this, and this was because he did not want to cause fear within the public, and for this reason I do not think that this is a horrible thing that he violated this canon. LeMessurier summed up by saying, "You have a social obligation in return for getting a license and being regarded with respect. You're supposed to look beyond the interests of yourself and your client to society as a whole. And the most wonderful part of my story is that when I did it, nothing bad happened."